Rye is a small town in the non-metropolitan county of East Sussex, within the historic county of Sussex, England, which stands approximately 2 miles from the open sea and is at the confluence of 3 rivers, the Rother, the Tillingham and the Brede. In medieval times, however, as an important member of the Cinque Ports Confederation, it was at the head of an embayment of the English Channel and almost entirely surrounded by the sea. Rye is officially a civil parish, but with its historic roots has the status of a town. At the 2011 census it had a population of 4,773. During its history, its association with the sea has included providing ships for the service of the king in time of war, and being involved with smuggling gangs of the 18th and 19th centuries such as the notorious Hawkhurst gang, who used its inns such as the Mermaid Inn, and the Oldie Bell Inn, connected by secret passageway. Those historic roots and its charm make it a tourist destination, and much of its economy is based on that. There are a number of hotels, guest houses, B&Bs, tea rooms and restaurants, as well as other attractions, catering for the visitor. There is a small fishing fleet, and Rye Harbour has facilities for yachts and other vessels. History. The name of Rye is believed to come from Rie, meaning a bank. Medieval maps show that Rye was originally located on a huge embayment of the English Channel called the Rye Camber, which provided a safe anchorage and harbour. Probably as early as Roman times, Rye was important as a place of shipment and storage of iron from the Wealden iron industry. The Mermaid Inn originally dates to 1156. Rye, as part of the Saxon manor of Ramsley, was given to the Benedictine Abbey of Fécamp in Normandy by King Ethelred. It was to remain in Norman hands until 1247. As one of the 2 antient towns, Rye was to become a limb of the Cinque Ports Confederation by 1189, and subsequently a full member. The protection of the town as one of the Cinque Ports was very important, due to the commerce that trading brought. One of the oldest buildings in Rye is Ypres Tower, which was built in 1249 as Bading's Tower, to defend the town from the French, and was later named after its owner John de Ypres. It is now part of the Rye Museum. Rye received its charter from King Edward I in 1289, and acquired privileges and tax exemptions in return for ship service for the Crown. The Landgate dates from 1329, in the early years of the reign of King Edward III. It is still the only vehicular route into the medieval centre of Rye and is suitable only for light vehicles. In 2015, some 25 tons of pigeon excrement that had built up had to be removed from Landgate Arch for fear of damaging the ancient structure. The River Rother originally took an easterly course to flow into the sea near what is now New Romney. However, the violent storms in the 13th century cut the town off from the sea, destroyed Old Winchelsea and changed the course of the Rother. Then the sea and the river combined in about 1375 to destroy the eastern part of the town, and ships began use the current area to unload their cargoes. 2 years later the town was sacked and burnt by the French, and it was ordered that the town walls be completed, as a defense against foreign raiders. Rye was considered one of the finest of the Cinque Ports, even though constant work had to be done to stop the gradual silting up of the river and the harbour. There was also a conflict of interest between the maritime interests and the landowners, who gradually inned or reclaimed land from the sea on Romney and Walland Marsh, and thus reduced the tidal flows that were supposed to keep the harbour free of silt. Acts of Parliament had to be passed to enable the Rother to be kept navigable at all. With the coming of bigger ships and larger deep-water ports, Rye's economy began to decline, and fishing and particularly smuggling became more important. Imposition of taxes on goods had encouraged smuggling since 1301, but by the end of the 17th century it became widespread throughout Kent and Sussex, with wool being the largest commodity. When luxury goods were also added, smuggling became a criminal pursuit, and groups, such as the Hawkhurst gang who met in the Mermaid Inn in Rye, turned to murder and were subsequently hanged. Since 1803 there have been lifeboats stationed at Rye, although the lifeboat station is now at Rye Harbour, approx 2 miles downriver from the town. The worst disaster in its history occurred in 1928, when the Mary Stanford lifeboat sank with all hands. The incident is recorded by a tablet at Winchelsea Church, by the imposing memorial at Rye Harbour Church, and by the folk song The Mary Stanford of Rye. A new RNLB Mary Stanford was commissioned by the RNLI 2 years later and stationed at Ballycotton on the coast of Ireland. Between 1696 and 1948 there have been 6 ships of the Royal Navy to bear the name HMS Rye. During the 1803 to 1805 Napoleonic invasion threat, Rye, Dover and Chatham were regarded as the 3 most likely invasion ports, and Rye became the Western Command Centre for the Royal Military Canal. The canal was planned from Pett Level to Hythe as a defence against a possible French invasion. Howard's 20-metre ditch was supposed to have stopped the finest army in Europe, which had already crossed all of Europe's great rivers at one time or another, was not clear. In the event, the canal was not completed until long after the need for it had passed. From 1838 to 1889 Rye had their own borough police force. The borough police force was a small force, often with just 2 officers. Rye police frequently had difficulties on bonfire night, and special constables were recruited to help deal with the problems bonfire gangs caused. After amalgamation with the county force in 1889, a new police station was provided in Church Square. In 1892 the strength of the town police, now amalgamated, was 1 sergeant and 3 constables. In May 1940, during the darkest days of World War II, the Rye fishing fleet was invited to participate in Operation Dynamo, the seaborne rescue of the stranded British Expeditionary Force at Dunkirk, but refused to do so. Paul Monard's book The Murder of Mr. Grabell, Madness and Civility in an English Town begins with the murder of a Justice of the Peace in Rye in 1743. Considering its background as far back as the Reformation, then looks at events in the town over the next 200 years. Walking Tour of Rye, The Most Beautiful Town in England, by Jonathan Copeland, ISBN 9781301139996, describes every important building, explains it and puts it into historical context. Many photographs illustrate the book. Rye Royal, Rye being part of the Cinque Ports Confederation and a bastion against invasion on the Channel coast, has always had close links with the Crown. It was King Edward III and the Black Prince who defeated the Spanish in Rye Bay in 1350 in the Battle of Les Espagnols-sur-Mer. But it was Queen Elizabeth I who gave the town the right to use the title Rye Royal, following a visit in 1573. King Charles I described Rye as the cheapest sea town for the provision of fish for our house. George I, whilst returning from visiting his continental possessions in 1726, was grounded on Camber Sands and spent the next 4 days in Rye, being accommodated at Lamb House Governance. Historically, Rye was an independent borough granted rights of governance under its charter of 1289, with its own appointed mayor and chosen jurats. These independent powers were terminated by the Local Government Act of 1973 and, although officially considered to be a civil parish, Rye's governing body, because of its history, is that of a town council. That council has 1 electoral ward, electing 16 members, one of whom then is elected mayor of Rye. In the town hall there is an unbroken list of the mayors of Rye going back to the 13th century. There are also 2 gruesome relics of Rye's violent past. The gibbet cage, which was famously used to display the hanged body of the murderer John Bredd in 1742, and the pillory last used in 1813 in the case of a local publican who assisted the escape of the French General Philippon. The current mayor is Councillor Bernardine Fidamore. Apart from the town council, local government is exercised by Rother District Council, with its headquarters in Bexhill-on-Sea, and East Sussex County Council, based in Lewes. The Rye ward returns 2 councillors to RDC. Since 1983, Rye has been part of the parliamentary constituency of Hastings and Rye, prior to which it had its own seat. The current Member of Parliament is Amber Rudd of the Conservative Party. Geography. Rye stands at the point where the sandstone highland of the Weald reaches the coast. The medieval coastline, with its large bay, enabled ships to come up to the port. The original course of the River Rother then reached the sea at Romney to the northeast. Storms in the English Channel in the 13th century, coupled with reclamation of the bay, brought huge quantities of gravel through longshore drift along the coast, blocking the port entrance. The course of the river has also changed over the centuries so that Rye now stands on the river at the point of its confluence with the River Tillingham and the River Brede, whereas the river flows southward into Rye Bay. River Rother and the environs of Rye Harbour are managed and maintained by the Environment Agency. The rivers Brede and Rother also form part of the Royal Military Canal between Winchelsea and Iden Loch. The town is part of the remotest and least populated area of southeastern England, on the edge of Romney Marsh and within 3 kilometres of the coast. A part of the town, but only a minority of the housing stock, lies on the original rocky heights and contains the historic buildings including St Mary's Parish Church, the Ypres Tower, Lamb House and many of the houses on Mermaid Street, Watchbell Street, and Church Square. The main road skirts the town to the south after crossing the river. Winchelsea Road leads to New Winchelsea Road, formerly Royal Military Road, which runs parallel to the River Brede before leaving the town boundary. The houses along New Winchelsea Road date from the 1930s, built on the excavations from the Royal Military Canal. The gardens run down to the river, with fishing and boating rights. Most of Rye's inhabitants live outside the citadel area. Economy. Rye, over the centuries, has successively been an entrepot port, a naval base, a fishing port, an agricultural centre and a market town. Today, more than anything, Rye depends on its tourist appeal, which attracts traffic from all over the world. The old part of the town within the former town walls now offers a wide range of antique shops, art galleries, gift shops, restaurants and a guitar shop in Lion Street near the church. Since World War II, the town has also become a renowned centre for ceramics. Apart from its tourist base, Rye continues to operate as a port. There has been considerable investment in facilities for both the fishing fleet berthed at Rye and the commercial wharves at Rye Harbour. Rye fishing boats are code-lettered RX and landfish daily. Some is sold at the quayside, though most is sold through the Great Regional Market in Boulogne. At Rye Harbour, the Rastrum's Wharf has the capacity to take large ships up to 80 metres on a high tide. Rye also is an important yachting base, offering the only safe haven for many miles in either direction along this section of Channel coast. Yachts may currently moor either at Rye Harbour or at the Strand Quay at the edge of the town. There have been numerous plans proposed for a modern yacht marina to be built at Rye, but each has founded on economic or planning grounds. Transport. At the latter end of the 18th century, Rye was connected to the Turnpike Trust system of roads. One of these, the Flinwell Turnpike, took passengers towards London. The second ran from Hastings eastwards through the town. These two roads are now the A268 and the A259. In the 1980s and 1990s there were proposals to bypass the A259 route around Rye, but these met with local opposition and never received any priority in the building programme. In addition to the hourly 100 and 101st over Hastings stagecoach long-distance coach service, there are buses connecting Rye with other towns and villages, including Tenterden, Hastings and Tunbridge Wells. Rye has a railway station on the Marshlink line between Hastings and Ashford. This now provides an hourly service from Brighton to Ashford International, connecting with Eurostar services to Paris Gare du Nord and the high-speed, Class 395 service to London St Pancras. Gatwick Airport may be reached by rail via Eastbourne or Lewes. Before World War II, there was a summer steamship service from Rye to Boulogne. Rye was also the terminus for the pre-war Rye and Camber Tramway, built to serve golf courses and Camber Sands. Closed to the public at the outbreak of World War II, never reopened and scrapped in 1947. Several long-distance footpaths can be joined by walkers in the town. The Saxon Shoreway, which starts at Gravesend, Kent and traces the coast as it was in Roman times, passes through Rye en route to Hastings. The 1066 country walk leads from Rye to Pevensey, the high-wheeled landscape trail goes to Horsham, and the Royal Military Canal path follows that waterway to Hythe. Education. Rye College is a secondary school in Rye. Rye Studio School opened in September 2013 for 14 to 19-year-olds. The two primary schools, Tilling Green Infant School and Frieda Gardem Community School, were replaced by a new school, Rye Primary, adjacent to the secondary institution, in September 2008. The original Rye Primary School was situated just off Ferry Road near the railway crossing. Places of worship. Past and present places of worship in Rye include St Mary's, the Anglican parish church with Norman origins, St Anthony of Padua Roman Catholic Church, rebuilt in 1929, a 1909 Baptist chapel in Singport Street, replacing the Rye Particular Baptist Chapel of 1754, former Congregational and Independent churches, and a Methodist chapel. Amenities. Rye is a local commercial centre for the Romney Marsh in Walland Marsh area, as well as being a tourist spot. Rye Farmers Market takes place on Strand Quay every Thursday morning. Rye has a well-established reputation as a centre for shops trading antiques, collectors' books and records, and has many art galleries selling works by local artists and potters with changing exhibitions throughout the year. Rye's general weekly market takes place on the Marketplace car park by the station every Thursday. Until the foot and mouth disease crisis in 2001, there were frequent livestock sales at Rye. Rye Castle Museum is located on two sites, in East Street and at the Ypres Castle. One of the tourist websites includes a picture tour of the town. Rye Art Gallery was established as a trust in the early 1960s. Located at 107 High Street, it provides a focus for contemporary visual art, which it exhibits alongside heritage artworks from its permanent collection. Rye also stands at the centre of a network of nature reserves, some of national importance. The Rye Harbour SSSI lies to the south and includes the Rye Harbour Nature Reserve. The neighbouring Pett Levels and Pools and the Panel Valley Nature Reserve are accessible via Winchelsea and Winchelsea Beach a few miles to the west, whilst Scotney Lake lies just off the Lydd Road, and the RSPB Reserve at Dungeness lies a few miles further to the east, with the Bird Observatory located in the old lighthouse. The recent redevelopment of the Rye Wharf for the RX fishing fleet has provided modern amenities for the landing and storage of fish. Most is sold wholesale through the regional market in Boulogne, though there is a trend for Rye to develop as a gastronomic centre in the style of Newquay or Padstow, featuring the use of fresh local produce from the sea. The annual Rye Bay Scallops Festival, which takes place each year in February, was first proposed by the then chair of the Chamber of Commerce, Kate Roy, as a means of promoting the Rye Bay catch. Excellent scallops are to be had in Rye Bay because of the shallow and relatively sheltered water. Every year in September, Rye hosts its annual two-week arts festival, which attracts a world-class series of performers in music, comedy and literature. On the second Saturday after November 5, the Bonfire Boys stage their annual torchlit parade through the streets of the town, supported by visiting bonfire societies from all over the Sussex Bonfire Societies Confederation. This is followed by a enormous bonfire, where the chosen effigy of the year is ceremoniously blown up, and a spectacular firework display. This event typically attracts over 10,000 visitors to the town, and results in the town's roads, and the main roads to London, Hastings and Ashford, being clogged up and closed to traffic from the early evening onwards. Sport and leisure. Rye has a non-league football club, Rye United FC, who play at the Salts.